Welcome back to Cutthroat Commander. I'm your host Tim. We're here with another round of Thada, Adel, Inquisitor as our general this week. For those of you who don't read the deck list in the show notes, it is blue 1 2/2 Island Walker. When it hits your opponent, you can search their library, exile an artifact from it. Until end of turn, you can cast that artifact for its mana cost, notably. My opponent is on the mono blue mirror, in this case with Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir, and that's a decent general. For the longest time, this deck originally was a Teferi deck until I was looking for an edge in blue mirrors and decided to go a different route. Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir, for those of you who don't know, is a blue 2 commander, so 5 total mana. Flash 3/4, which is already, kind of annoying. But then the real kicker is you can cast creatures you control with Flash. And then also your opponent is locked out of casting any spells at other than sorcery speed. And most people don't realize the full implications of that. One implication is that it stops certain very powerful effects like Suspend and Cascade, because those spells are going on the stack not at sorcery speed. Suspend goes off during your upkeep, so you can't cast the spell and it'll just get stranded there, never to come back again. Cascade, there's another spell on the stack, the original Cascade card, so you can't cast anything at sorcery speed then, therefore those cascaded cards just don't get cast. It's very powerful against some of the more powerful strategies in Commander. You have decks like Jwara and Maelstrom Wanderer that Teferi does a good job of shutting down. The Flash gives it a lot of play as well. We'll discuss as this goes along some of the pros and cons, or rather some of the pros of being a Flash commander. And then finally, it's just important to note that in a mono blue mirror, shutting down my counterspells is going to be very powerful. That's not to say I don't have advantages as well. One advantage is that I have an island walking commander. If I can get down my commander, there's a good chance that it will be able to get in for a few hits and really drive this game out of reach. However, it can be really annoying to get your commander down. Because you have a Flash commander opponent, the types of decks that tend to play Teferi are traditional Drago blue decks. As you watch my videos, I play more of a tap-out control style with this deck. Yes, I have counterspells and things like that, but I'm generally spending a lot of my mana on my turn, proactively laying acceleration, threats, card draw, etc. Whereas he is almost certainly going to be sitting back. And there are advantages to that, obviously, but at a certain point, you're foregoing very powerful effects in order to do that. And we'll see that as we go along. So he keeps. This hand is a little risky in the sense that it doesn't have colored blue mana, but overall it's a good hand. Soul Ring, obviously, great turn 1 play. Ponder, Muldrifter, Jace, great cards. Strip Mine is very powerful. Unlike Wasteland, it can actually hit base Skyland, and it can really be used in a strategic spot to force through a threat. If he only leaves up, say, 2 mana, advertising a counterspell, this can hopefully punch a hole through that. Jace is not as good as he normally is, mainly because you have to respect the fact that he cannot protect himself in this matchup most of the time, because a lot of the time your opponent can end step Teferi and swing at Jace. So you've really got to keep that in mind, and it forces Jace a lot of times to +2 before doing anything, or else you're just going to lose it. Alright, so my opponent simply plays Island Go. And against this type of deck, there's obviously a chance of getting missteps, spell pierced, whatever on the Soul Ring. So some people might argue to try and bait it out with Ponder, but it's really not worth it. Those cards don't see a lot of play, and next turn you open yourself up to an even wider series of counterspells. So go ahead and run Soul Ring out. Alright, so here there's a strong chance he's holding up Counterspell, knowing this type of deck. So one way you can get ahead of these draw-go decks is by deploying more than one spell per turn. It's very hard for them to keep up. And also by deploying spells on a continual basis, A, eventually they'll run out of counters, and B, it often prevents them from taking the time to refill their hand. Like, if he has to counter something this turn, he's not going to be impulsing. If he has to counter something in the next few turns, he's not going to be casting Thirst for Knowledge or Stroke of Genius or Jace's Ingenuity. He's spending all his time trying to catch up, and because of our potential mana advantage here, that's a game he might very well lose. So we start off just by cracking an island. The reason for that is we don't want to televise the strip mine until we have to. So we start off with Worn Power Stone. I'm going to take a brief aside here. One annoying thing about how the lack of ban list warps the format is Mana Drain. Mana Drain's normally banned in 1v1 Commander, and the reason for that is normally here, if this gets countered, it's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. However, if it gets mana drained, your opponent's probably playing a 6-drop, or not probably, but could be playing a 6-drop on turn 3. The card is extremely swingy, and really you have to be careful what you're swinging it into. But you can't always play scared. Your opponent is probably going to eventually pull ahead if you're sitting there not playing spells for fear of mana drain. So here, I choose to run it out there. One alternative would have been strip mine and then play it to avoid mana drain, but then you're just facing the same problem the next turn with your Mole Drifter or your Jace. It's better to just get it out of the way if he has it now. And sometimes they'll hold out hoping for a bigger fish. Here I play Ponder and see 3 very good cards. Negate, Remand, and Capture of Jin Zhao. I apologize to any Chinese watchers if I really just butchered that name. I'm not great at that. All these are great. Cheap 1 blue counterspells are great for forcing through threats. Capture Jin Zhao can just punish somebody if they tap out. So I'm going to choose to take the counterspells first. And then hope my replay isn't broken here. Okay, so at the end of turn, if you didn't notice that happened because the replay was buggy, he into the Royals my Worn Power Stone, which is not the end of the world. And he just simply plays a 3rd blue mana and says go. So here, I want to replay that Power Stone. And although I'd like to save it, I end up playing the Strip Mine because I really need it to counteract whatever counterspell he might have. Alright, but it resolves. And here I decided it's more important to hold up a counterspell than it is to Strip Mine a random island. Alright, so here I go ahead and cast Mole Drifter and don't have to protect it yet again. So at this point I'm beginning to suspect he might not have any counter spells, or else you think he would have chose to fight over one of these plays. Here I draw Wasteland, which is pretty useless in this matchup so far. But one thing it does allow me to do is Strip Mine. one of his islands, keep him off that Teferi, because I'm probably going to want to play Jace next turn. So here is a key mistake I make. He casts Fact or Fiction. Alright. The mistake is not in casting Negate on this. The mistake is not just going ahead to strip mine his island. I really think in hindsight I probably should have done it there. Instead, I do it on his upkeep, which allows him to get a little value out of it by cycling Blue Sun Zenith. But all in all, it does not work out for the worst. And he plays Riptide Laboratory. So now this Wasteland is live. And since I've still got this Remand, I go ahead and cast the Jace, because that's going to make my Time Walk effect much better if I have a Planeswalker in play. Here, I put back Devastation Tide and Tezzeret. Devastation Tide is obviously not very good right now. He has nothing I want to bounce. And Tezzeret will be good, but I'm going to get another chance to draw that next turn. Alright, there could have been some argument there for Wastelanding Riptide Laboratory, but instead I decide to hold up in case he does something kind of niche like bounce the Soul Ring and then wait out my floated mana. Here he's casting Clever Impersonator, almost certainly going to grab the Jace. It simply gets remanded, and that's when he quits the game. Alright, not terribly exciting in terms of gameplay when you're watching it, in terms of being action-packed. However, one reason I chose to include it, even though it was a short game, is to illustrate the decision-making that goes from sequencing your plays. Tons of people play counterspells in Commander, and when you're playing against a deck that is almost nothing but counterspells, it's important to realize how you might want to sequence plays to get around them. And even I made mistakes even in this game. Looking back on that second turn, I probably should have led with Ponder over Worn Power Stone. The reason for that, I might have baited out a counter. I might have drawn something like a Force of Will if I really wanted to force something through. But generally speaking, this kind of illustrates how you kind of play around things and how to handle these blue-on-blue mirrors. What's important, how your considerations change. And kind of a difference in style between a tap-out blue deck like mine and a Drago blue deck like his. And ultimately, I think you gain a lot of flexibility by playing the by playing the Drago plan of always reacting to your opponents. For those of you who played against fairies in Standard back in Lorwyn, you'll understand the benefits of flexibility. On the other hand, you lose on just power level. Playing things like Time Work effects and Eldrazi and tons of mana rocks can quickly allow you to put the game out of reach if your opponent even stumbles once. So hopefully this video, although isn't exactly a battle of the titans for the game, can illustrate what you're looking for in these control matches and how to kind of dance around your opponent's answers. Anyway, hopefully this video was kind of useful, and we'll try and get some really grindy games in there as well.